Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV radio and podcast alongside Todders and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Coming up today on this Wednesday, brought to you by our good friends at First Cup Coffee Company. There is a flavor there for every freedom-loving American. They have the same value systems that you guys do, and they make some pretty boss coffee as well. Just ask Aaron. He'll tell you. If you want to give it a shot, it is shipped within days of being roasted. In fact, they put the roast date right there on each bag. Go to firstcup.com, use the code DACE, and save an additional 10% off your order if you do. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE, save 10% off. And if you subscribe, you get an additional 10% off as well. Firstcup.com, use the promo code DACE. Next hour, we'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation. Starting at the bottom of this hour, we'll begin buy, sell, or hold. We'll get through as many of them as we possibly can, and then the ones we could not get to, we will do in the overtime today, exclusively for BlazeTV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. That's also where you can go to become a BlazeTV subscriber, by the way, at a discount, blazetv.com/Deace. But let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a Pump the Sunshine update. Joe Biden announced this morning he's canceling the student loan debts, somehow, of over 150,000 Americans. That debt forgiveness is expected to cost upwards of $1.2 billion. The White House says this is for those who initially borrowed $12,000 or less and have been repaying their debt for at least 10 years. A Boeing 757 was forced to divert to Denver International Airport after a chunk of the wing came off mid-flight. The flight did land in Denver successfully. Flight was going from San Francisco to Boston before it made its emergency landing. Russiagate 2.0 just dropped. Here's Congressman Dan Goldman on CNN, who says investigations into Hunter Biden's shady business deals is Russian disinformation.
Not only is there no evidence of any wrongdoing by President Biden, but it now appears as if the House Republican majority is being used by Russia to interfere in the 2024 election on behalf of Donald Trump. If they continue with this investigation, they are simply doing the work of Vladimir Putin to help Donald Trump win an election in November. That's where we are.
South Dakota legislature has failed to pass a bill stopping private use eminent domain for so-called carbon capture pipelines. Typically, eminent domain is used to essentially seize private property by the government for public use or used by a private company for public use. The bill would have banned private companies from seizing private property for that company's private use, at least as I understand. A Catholic couple in Indiana is asking the Supreme Court to hold the state accountable for keeping their child out of their home after they declined to use his chosen name and preferred pronouns. In MC and JC, the Indiana Department of Child Services, Mary and Jeremy Cox are appealing to the Supreme Court after they were investigated by Indiana officials for refusing to refer to their son using pronouns and a name inconsistent with his, created sex.
When our son was removed, it was like someone pulled the rug out from underneath us. As a father, I believe one of my main goals is to keep my children safe. And I can't do that when the state comes into our house and takes our kid because we can't, in good conscience, affirm his transgender ideology. His disappearance made a huge hole in our hearts and our family, but we will always love him and pray for him.
2 more individuals, in addition to the 2 juveniles, have been charged in the Kansas City Chiefs parade shooting. Those individuals are Dominique Miller and Lindell Mays, who each face charges of second-degree murder and 2 counts of armed criminal action and unlawful use of a weapon. And now some not-so-sucky news. Donald Trump has endorsed Mike Olcott over a total corporatist squish in a Texas state legislative primary. That's good news. You remember that video last week featuring that Oklahoma state lawmaker who said, quote, "It depends whether it's the role of the government to ban barbaric behavior." That video came from Abolitionists Rising, and now their YouTube channel is the most watched pro-life channel on that platform, and they are well worth a follow. Dr. Phil went on Joe Rogan's podcast recently and called out the American medical establishment for pushing gender ideology and promised to devote episodes of his TV show to exposing the issue.
The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Endocrine Society, or whatever the exact name of that is. All of the major medical associations have signed off on this, Joe. They've signed off on it. And I have never seen those organizations sign off on anything with less information as to whether or not it does long-term harm of anything in my life. And when I ask about that, when I bring that up, then they immediately label you as transphobic. And I thought that the deal was first do no harm. And all of the European countries, Sweden, Norway, they've all stopped doing it because they say, we cannot say in good conscience that this does no harm, because it does harm. If you look at the long-term consequences, if someone changes their mind at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, they can't decide which pajamas they want to wear at night. And their reason for doing it is it stops this drive for suicide, that there's a suicide epidemic. It doesn't fix that.
And finally, what's going on at Eric Adams' house? Eric Adams released this video while he was a New York State lawmaker as a warning for parents in an instructional video for parents. It ended up being one of the most unintentionally hilarious videos possibly ever.
I'm New York State Senator Eric Adams, and for 22 years, I wore a bulletproof vest. Please come and join me inside my house. What I would like to show here is to empower parents on how to search a room inside their home. You write the Constitution. There are no First Amendment rights inside your household. So by periodically sending a message to your home that there are no rooms off limits, you don't believe in locked doors, your house is open to inspection, but you always have to inspect what you expect. You can look in a jewelry box of this nature, maybe a simple jewelry box, but if you look through it closely, you don't know what your child may be hiding. For instance, a gun could be hidden, a small caliber weapon could be hidden inside a jewelry box. When your child brings in his popular knapsack with many different locations, look through it to see what exactly is your child carrying in addition to a book. Something simple as a crack pipe, a used crack pipe. Could he have found it on the street? That's quite possible. But this is a discussion piece where you should start speaking with him to find out what is he doing with it. Behind a picture frame, you can find bullets. What does that mean to find bullets? Does it mean your child is carrying a gun? No. Where there's smoke, there's possible fire. Where there's a bullet, there's possibly a gun. The baby doll could be just a baby doll, but also it could be a place where you can secrete or hide drugs. Run your hands over the pillows. This one could be hidden inside a pillow, a gun. Just look and see what's inside your bookcases. Perfect place to hide cocaine. There are no First Amendment rights in your home.
And that's what happened while we were away. Come join me in my house.
What the hell was that? I mean, this
could be a baby doll, could be a stack of bills.
Spare bullets behind the picture frame? This is the dumbest time to be alive, but even by those standards, that is one of the most whack things I've ever seen. I mean, that was like a Dan Aykroyd late 70s level of SNL parody. I mean, and that was like a PSA for parents in his district. My word. Where do we go from here? Let's do this. Let's make sure we honor our friends over at Preborn. As we sit here today, the lives of babies still in the womb hang in the balance. Everyone, that's why we want to talk to you for a minute here about the most important pressing issue of our day, the cause of life. Those babies need our help. The ministry of Preborn empowers young expectant mothers in crisis to choose life. Preborn has rescued hundreds of thousands of babies' lives through ultrasounds. When a woman considers abortion, she visits a preborn center, she gets to hear her baby's heartbeat and meet that precious child on that ultrasound, and it's a divine encounter. The majority of the time, she will choose life for her baby. We're proud on this show to be affiliated with an organization that's not only working to save lives, but it's succeeding. Preborn has a passion to save babies from abortion and see women come to Christ. That's why our family has donated our own money to preborn as well. Over the past 15 years, preborn centers have counseled over 450,000 women considering the murder of their children. And over 200,000 babies' lives have been saved. Those are amazing numbers. Let's do even more. Will you help rescue some babies' lives? To donate, tax deductible today, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone, or go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. Well, let's go to the montage. A lot is going on there. I believe one of my top 10 predictions for this year was the very first item in your montage, Aaron. Now, first of all, what does it mean that canceling the student loan debt for only 150,000 people gets you well over $1 billion? What does that tell you about what the cost of going to college is these days? That won't be how it'll be reported in any media. Any of the measured steps here, it's a very limited supply of people who are probably pretty close to paying off their remaining debt, but have been paying according to the White House. And of course, they wouldn't lie to us. Anyway, it'll just be headlines, billions of dollars forgiven by Joe Biden. And there's going to be more where that comes from. There's going to be more. They're going to cut interest rates this year. Someone sent me a note this morning on social media when I mentioned this. We're going to have to cut them quite a bit. No, they don't. I mean, they should. They should have to cut them quite a bit, but they don't. You have to understand the way, again, we have to understand human behavior. And, you know, on a meta level, Marxists don't understand human behavior because they reject the Word of God. So they think human nature is basically good. And therefore, if we concentrate power into the hands of the most elite among us, and of course, who gets to determine who the most elite among us is? Why, the Marxist, of course. I mean, come on. I mean, they get to choose. And did they have an election? No. They just chose themselves. But on a micro level, Marxists do understand human nature a lot better than, frankly, a lot of the people we vote for do. Let me give you an example. Pre-COVID, if you were paying $2.80 a gallon for gasoline, you would be firing up the iced tea, Mama Gotta Die Tonight, right? Yeah. Pre-COVID, you're paying $2.80 for gasoline. Someone's losing 40 house seats, right? Yeah. That's the way things worked around here for like 50 years.
Yes.
Okay, right? Paying $2.80 for a gallon of gasoline now in where we live. And you know what you're thinking? Man, the price has really gone down. Marxists understand Machiavellianism. One of the things Machiavelli talks about is when the prince is tired of hearing from the people that he's too brutal of a leader, of a dictator. And so one day he appoints basically a vicar, someone to rule in his place. And this guy is way worse. And he's so bad that the people cry out to the prince, save us from this person, this replacement. We want you back. So one day they all get up on a morning and they go down to the plaza, the town square, and the head of the vicar is on display. He's been taken care of. He's been dealt with. And the people cheer because salvation is nigh. See, the Marxist doesn't understand human nature on the macro, but they absolutely get it on the micro. Loki was right. We were made to be ruled. The Bible says that too. Paul says you'll be a bondservant to something or a slave. You'll be a slave to the things of this world or a slave to your maker, but you're going to be a slave to one. So choose. Choosing not to be a slave is to choose to be a slave to the world, because you can't avoid the influences of one or the other. You're either in the world and of it or in the world and not of it, but there is no in between. That area doesn't exist. And every time societies think that area exists, they end up accepting fallacies to rule them, like Marxism. And so they don't have to cut interest rates like 4 or 5 times. They have to just cut them once. We're sitting on this huge, massive glut of houses that haven't been sold or bought in the last 3 years. Massive glut of inventory. Just cut them a little bit. And all of a sudden, again, if pre-COVID, hell, 2 years ago, during COVID, if you went to buy or refi a house for 6% interest, you're storming the Bastille for that. Now, you're going to be conditioned that, well, interest rates are going down. Good time to finally, go buy that next house. They get that. They understand it. They understand if they just do stuff and they're willing to endure the initial blowback for it, but just let it become normal, especially because there is no rival political movement that are step to the forefront and challenging on the merits. So it becomes normal without a challenge. A funny thing is, you tend to win every argument when no one argues the other side. Have you noticed that?
I have.
You tend to win every fight when no one punches back. Ever notice that?
I have.
And you tend to win every war when no one shoots back. Have you noticed this?
Indeed.
So when you have no opposition, I know a lot of you think, wow, they're just so smart and clever. No, they just don't have any opposition. They just don't. They have no opposition. So, you know why people play for the Harlem Globetrotters? Because they weren't good enough to be in the NBA. They had a hell of a lot more money playing in the NBA. So they couldn't make it in the NBA, so they do tricks. And when your opposition is the Washington Generals, you look like you're really good. Those guys would get creamed by any NBA team. Creamed. It'd look like a rec league game. No shot. That's how it happens here. They're not smart. They're not clever. They call you names because they don't have any really deep probing thoughts. They don't have a hermeneutic. They don't have arguments. They also just don't have any opponents, really. So they can do whatever they want.
Including you.
Yeah, and they just do whatever they want. They know that. They know. I mean, I had a friend of mine send me a note about somebody this morning or last night. A friend of mine sent me a note. Someone they know, their daughter is in Missouri and she's got to wrestle a dude in Missouri. And they wanted my take on it. I said, here's my take. My daughter would never do that. Not in a million years. We'd either pull her or I'd go down there just as it was about to start and just sit on the mat and make it end. Would never happen. Never happen. Not in a million years. Not in a million years. There would be pushback. They don't have pushback. So they don't have to cut things 3 times. I mean, if you're thinking we're dealing with a real economic process in a business cycle, and if you do, you're adorable. All right? I've been dealing with one of those since we invented, printed money. But they should have to. That's the way the world should work, right? It should, but it's not the way this world works. It's a fallen world. And so now people are thinking, man, if you could give me 6.75 interest on a 30-year fix, that looks great. When it's still 100% more than it was 3 years ago. Okay? That's how human nature works. There's no opposition. Nobody offering an alternative, nobody punching back. And so things become normalized when they're not opposed. Which brings me to what's happening, and I'm going to prove my point with an issue completely on the other side of the issue spectrum here. Look what is happening on the tranny issue right now. This is the first time I can ever remember, and I'll be 51 in July. Now, of course, not all of those years I was politically aware, and even all those years I have been politically aware. A lot of those years, or not all of those years, was I culturally or spiritually aware. Okay? But I cannot think of an issue related to moral significance, absolute truth. What we have seen, really, from the abortion issue to the marriage issue, is that if the church did not oppose it, there was no opposition. I mean, every once in a while, you'd come up with, every once in a while, there'd be pro-life atheists who just, looked at a sonogram in a womb and were personally abhorred. But first of all, atheists aren't much of the population anyway, but the pro-life atheists are the sliver of the sliver of the sliver, okay? They're like the sliver you pull out of your nail. They're like just the tip that you can get with your own fingertip before you got to go get the pliers or the pluckers and pull the whole thing out, okay? And then you see how deep it really was. They're nothing. All right, nothing. Lindsey Graham has slept with more women than there are pro-life atheists, if that tells you anything. Just not a meaningful population. So most people will not oppose things of a moral nature without, now follow me here, without a moral nature. Thoughts? Okay. Most people will not oppose things that are immoral if they are not moral. And of course, where do we get morality from? Consensus? Well, that's what the other side thinks. Contracts? That's what libertarians think. Where do we get morality from?
God.
That's where we get it from. So, what we're seeing here, though, this is the first time now. Guys, just a year and a half ago, Dr. Phil put Matt Walsh on his show to get ganged up on by a bunch of trannies that he was actually sympathetic to. Now he's on Joe Rogan, the biggest show in the Western frickin' hemisphere. Joe Rogan has an Oprah-like level audience. Like the audience Oprah had in syndication when we were growing up. The closest you can emulate in today's more democratized information highway where there's more than 5 channels, right? Okay. The closest thing we have to that right now is Rogan. And Dr. Phil, who was discovered by Oprah, by the way, if you remember, Dr. Phil is on the biggest show in this hemisphere, absolutely destroying these people on the tranny stuff. For whatever reason, and I would love to know you two guys' thoughts on this. This is the first time that one of these culture war issues that I can remember that specifically dealt in morality and absolute truth, I cannot think of a time that it crossed over into the broader zeitgeist with our arguments. That Mercy Me did a song called I Can Only Imagine that not only was number 1 on the Christian charts, but crossed over and went top 10 on the Billboard chart, broader charts. That's kind of what's happening here on the tranny issue. What is it about this issue that for whatever reason now the broader culture, you've got RFK Jr. talking about this, the broader culture is discussing this now. You've got the woman who hosts ESPN's, one of their most important shows, their NFL pregame show, Samantha Ponder, speaking out about it. Martina Navratilova continues to speak out about it, by the way. She was a pioneering lesbian in sports. For whatever reason, this issue has gone broader than just the remnant of whatever's left of the church in the West versus the world. Why do you guys think that is? It's the first one I can ever think of that this has happened.
I've got an idea, although I'm a little distracted. I mean, I've spent the last 15 minutes. I keep
counting how many women Lindsey Graham has slept with.
No, I just keep
because it wouldn't take 15 minutes. I can promise you that.
I just keep wondering whether or not you have a crack pipe or a small caliber weapon in your glass jar over there, Steve. I mean, that's all I can think about. But actually, no. I go back to pre-2020, and for a couple of years there, semi-regularly, I told you once. We believe in tranny madness. We'll believe in absolutely anything.
I remember, yeah.
I think that's really what it is. And in theological terms, I kind of talked about the notion of, like in science, the notion of entropy, the universe exploding out and then starting to. There are debates throughout. Does it then start to collapse on itself, or does it infinitely spread out like that? And I said, this experiment, this American experiment, is in fact collapsing in on itself in terms of it trying to. Succeed in being created in the image of likeness of God. And where that starts off, in terms of our sins, you can talk about the slavery is talked about as the, primordial sin of America, obviously abortion. But if you take creation from the beginning, explode it out and come back, the very last thing you'll come back to is man and woman, because that happens before Cain and Abel. It happens before slavery. So I think there's no place left to go after this lie, other than flat out God. It's the God killer stuff.
Meaning that it's this or flat Earth. That's how obvious this one is. Your thought?
After this, it's just God is dead.
Okay,
that's it. So the last thing outside of God specifically is I created male and female in my image. It is the height of creation, and I think intuitively, Steve, you've been doing this before I started talking about this. Romans 1 stuff. People fundamentally, this is the end of the road if we just can't get this right. And so there's even people in the depths of their of the other kinds of sin. Navratilova, for example. Oprah, for example. How long have you been talking about the high priest of
American paganism?
Yes. Yeah. But, she managed to tab the guy who's now saying, dude, what's going on? I really think that what this is. People somehow know, and this has to do with how God created us and why, and even at our depths, this is grace. This is unmerited favor. It's not because these people are particularly bright. They're screwing up a lot of other things. But that seed of truth, it isn't being extinguished. And thank God for that. I don't know if it's how much time we got left on the clock for that to happen, but I think that's the nature of this beast.
What do you think of that hypothesis, Aaron?
I hope that is the case and it results in a pendulum swing back towards sanity. What I fear, though, is that in the case of a J.K. Rowling, in the case of a Martina Navratilova, in the case of any number of celebrities, feminists, lesbians, what have you, who have come out in opposition of so-called transgender ideology, what I fear is actually happening is, yes, they deduce that this is a major problem, this is insane, but they're essentially saying, I want the scorpion without the stinger. And that's not going to be sufficient.
Agreed. Totally agree.
That's not going to be sufficient.
Correct. Well, I think both of your hypotheses actually complement one another.
I agree.
I mean, ultimately, what Todd is describing is this may be the last morsel of common grace, natural law left in the West. And what Aaron is saying is, but natural law cannot save a people unto itself.
Right,
I mean,
right.
ultimately, if it's not recognized as the laws of nature and nature's God, if it's just looked at, I mean, Ayn Rand had some brilliant observations. She's in hell now by her own spoken declarations of what she thought of God, she thought of Christianity. She thought we were idiots, morons, and she didn't need forgiveness. And she was very public about that. So barring something happening on her deathbed we're not aware of, I mean, she's in hell as we speak. And yet she would have authored some of the kinds of things you're talking about that would have recognized through her own objectivism, the natural law or general revelation.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
just within the sports community, there's an eternal logic that everybody sees. Only the guys who thinks they're chicks go play with the chicks.
Right.
The chicks who think they're guys
don't
play
move
with
up.
the guys because everybody's like,
well, they kind of know.
Yeah, we kind of know.
Yeah. Like, if Serena Williams isn't playing against the guys.
No, and she said
when asked, I would get destroyed. Yeah. I mean, Riley Gaines, when she testified to Congress, talked about, hey, man, I love my husband. He's a pretty mediocre college swimmer, just in terms of accolades compared to me. I was elite.
Yeah.
Every time we swim against each other, he beats me. Every single time. Pat Summitt may be the greatest women's basketball coach of all time. She would have her teams in the offseason practice against student managers at Tennessee.
Yes.
Not like the guy players, which is managers, guys who play like intramural rec league basketball. That's who she had them practice against.
And that's still the common practice in sports of all kinds. My daughter's soccer team, same thing.
All right, there's one more point I want to make from Aaron's montage because it's a point we've had to make previously, but I want to drive it home all the more because it's vital. So we'll get to that, and then we'll get to buy, sell, or hold here when we return. All All right, a couple more things I want to touch on from Aaron's montage before we get to buy, sell, or hold. But first, a reminder from our friends at Relief Factor that pain is your body's way of letting you know that something is wrong. Most of the time, what it's trying to tell you is you've got too much inflammation in your joints if you're dealing with chronic pain. Those aches and pains you feel throughout the day, those are mostly due to inflammation. You can find easy ways to mask the pain. But let's be honest, that always doesn't work that well. Sometimes the stuff you take to mask it can leave you feeling weird, drowsy, etc. The other option is you can fight it, and a great way to do that is by taking Relief Factor. So if you're dealing with pain, please give Relief Factor a try. It's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors who can prescribe drugs, and its 4 key ingredients work with your body to fight that inflammation. 70% of the people who try it end up ordering more because of the results they see with that 3-week quick start in 3 weeks or less. So see how Relief Factor can help you for just $20. What do you got to lose for $20 for 3 weeks to see if you don't see that kind of difference yourself? Go to relieffactor.com. Take advantage of their feel better or your money back guarantee at relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. All right, a couple more things, Aaron, that you put in your montage that I want to mention. We have talked about this before on different fronts, but I want to merge these two theses now into one. I spoke to a conservative group, hardcore conservative group, Tennessee Stands, in Nashville a few weeks ago, and one of the things I said to them was, I may be the first conservative speaker, right-wing speaker you've ever had come down here and tell y'all you got to start thinking more like California does. Now, what do I mean by that? And I clarified it for them. On Election Day 2017, we had the fewest elected Democrats in this country nationwide than we had had since before the Great Depression, before FDR's New Deal coalition was put into place. And yet, if you walk through the streets of San Francisco, the morning after that, of Donald Trump's inauguration, was life any different? Was that any different in San Francisco at all?
No.
I mean, did the homeless people like, you know what, man? I was going to drop trowel and just squeeze off a brick right here on the sidewalk. But I went by this storefront and they had a TV in the window and I saw Donald Trump got inaugurated and they flashed this graphic that there's the fewest Democrats in elected office we've ever had. So, I mean, I just can't be a homeless defecator now. So I guess I got to find a public toilet or a tree somewhere in a private setting. Did that happen? Were there fewer turds on sidewalks in San Francisco because Republicans were in control in Washington, D.C.?
I remember Ron DeSantis showing us the poop map, so
Indeed.
It went on.
And there didn't seem to be a precipitous decline around January 2017, I noticed, yes. Did they stop, giving free hotel rooms to trainee homeless people awaiting bottoms surgery? Because if you're homeless, that's what you need. Did they stop doing those? No. They thought, oh, snap, man. Look, the country has spoken. The Republicans are in charge. No, man, they just San Francisco'd on. They don't care. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean, they'd prefer, their communist was in charge, but they have so much control of the zeitgeist and the infrastructure that it really doesn't matter. It would take like a generation of Trump narrative level disruption and DeSantis policy level disruption in the White House to penetrate the bubble that they have created for themselves with all of the local infrastructure that they have control of. And that's the way. That's the way. If you want to be a red state, don't come to me with, well, Republicans win here. Usually, that doesn't tell me anything. You want to be a red state, do that. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they want a ballot harvest in Philadelphia County until Thanksgiving. Life in Tennessee is not going to change all that much because we're in control here. That's the way the Sons of Liberty operated before there was a revolution. You did not want to be the representative from the crown that went into the neighborhoods the Sons of Liberty controlled and said, King George has some thoughts. That was the job. They gave that one to the interns. You were lucky if you came back alive, and the minimum cost was tarred and feathered. That was the Annie at the table. And that was if, wife and I had some good quality time last night, kids are in a good mood, the crops are looking good. If the Sons of Liberty were in a good mood, all you got was tarred and feathered. They let you live. And if you think I'm exaggerating, go read our history, guys. I'm not. Nobody would dare implement this stuff in Tennessee. Nobody would dare implement this stuff in Mississippi. Nobody would dare implement this stuff in West Virginia. Wouldn't even try it. Just like we wouldn't dare implement this stuff in New York. We wouldn't dare try implementing it in California. Do we have a single one of those states yet? No. Ironically, the closest to it is a state that no one viewed as a red state until 2 or 3 years ago. Florida. It's not there yet, but it's closer than any of these other traditional red states are. Case in point, Aaron, what you put in your montage, that family that is going to lose their kid, they live where?
San Francisco.
So they should have seen it coming, obviously.
Indiana.
They live in Indiana. I went and looked at the last 100 years. During the break, I went and looked at the last 100 years of presidential election history in Indiana. So I'm going back to 1920 now. Democrats have won 4 times in Indiana since 1920. All 4 times were years where they had historic landslides. FDR's first 2 elections. What LBJ did to Barry Goldwater in 64, and then Barack Obama 2008. I mean, Bill Clinton won 2 pretty convincing presidential elections. He couldn't win Indiana. And he was actually pretending to be a moderate. In fact, if you look at so there's been 26 presidential elections in Indiana since 1920. I gave you the 4 Democrats won where they won historic levels of national dominance. And so Indiana obviously got caught up in the trade winds of that. In the other 22 presidential elections in Indiana since 1920, Democrats have averaged 40.3% of the popular vote. Would 22 presidential elections be a pretty good sample size to draw some conclusions from?
One would think.
One would think. Certainly more of a sample size than Anthony Fauci provided us for the efficacy of masks. Fair? All right. 40%, guys. 40. Which means Republicans were averaging, guys, do the math. Do we still do that around here? Can you still do math? Is that permitted? Do we know? Look at the math. Which means in the other 22 presidential elections, Republicans were averaging right around 60. You know, they're giving 1 or 2%, you know, and then you had the 92 year with Perot. Okay, fine. Probably round it down to maybe 56, 57%. That's still pretty dominant. That means, you know, Republicans are averaging 2 touchdown wins. You guys, in Indiana, I understand within the state of Indiana football, you guys, over the years, you don't know really what a 2 touchdown win is, but that's what I just articulated. That's the average. And so you win that many times, all the political infrastructure in the state is controlled by who?
The GOP.
Yeah, because they're winning statewide. So all the political infrastructure is controlled by Republicans. Therefore, the people that are in charge of the bureaucracies, appointed largely by Republicans. The judges making the decisions, largely appointed by
Republicans.
And this isn't a new thing. Like in Florida, I went back to 1920. Okay, flappers, jazz. We gave Academy Awards for white people to put on blackface back then. Okay, I went back that far. So that level of infrastructure in your state controlled by Republicans. Controlled by Republicans. Dude, Indiana's so Republican, the recent president of Purdue University was a former Republican elected official, Mitch Daniels. And yet that state, they're trying to take away a family's kids for not embracing such a massive lie that Dr. I was discovered by Oprah Phil and Joe, cannabis is a food group, Rogan, have managed in the limitations of their moral viewpoint to team up together and adequately deconstruct it in front of about 15 million people yesterday. Right?
Yes.
Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil better on this than Indiana. And this ties back to the very beginning of the show. You know why the other side seems so smart and clever? There's no opposition. There is none. How many times do you lose an argument when nobody argues the other side, Todd? Let's do this again.
Never.
Never. How many fights do you lose when nobody punches you back?
Never.
Yeah. How many wars and battles do you lose when no one shoots back or fires back?
Getting used to never.
Never. Yeah. You know what Indiana is? It's not a red state. You know what Indiana is? It's a never. That's what it is. It's just a never. It's a whitewash tomb, like every other red state, basically. Just because you vote for a lot of Republicans doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. At this point, you're better off living in Chino Hills, California, where Pastor Jack Hibbs' church has complete control of the local city infrastructure there. Better chance that you'll save your kids from this in Chino Hills, California right now than you will in Indiana. Aaron, did you find a bunch of headlines this morning? A bunch of Indiana Republican politicians eager. Like we saw in Missouri, for example, the last two attorney generals eager to make a name for themselves by going after the COVID fascism, right? And suing Anthony Fauci, right? We saw that, right? We were even rewarded him with some airtime on our show last year, from what I recall, right? Okay. Aspiring Indiana Republican officials, this is the issue. This is the thing that will launch me from backbencher in the state house to state majority leader or governor, senator, congressman. Are they lining up? Aaron, did you see a bunch of follow-up stories today? Indiana Republican officials lining up to cash in on this obvious injustice for their own political gain.
Pacers, Pistons, tomorrow at 6.
Yeah, that's what you saw. Yeah. It's not a red state. It's a never state. It's a never state. Like, start with never opposing that which is bad, and then count yourself lucky from there. We're just voting Republicans, but we're never really a red state. And that's almost every red state. Similar thing you see in Europe, by the way. Is it the countries that never succumb to the Iron Curtain? Are they the ones that are holding on to their heritage and legacies?
No.
No, they're the ones turning their Catholic cathedrals into mosques and arresting evangelicals who preach on the street. Who's pushing back?
Poland, Hungary,
yeah, the Eastern Bloc, yeah. The countries who are still a generation away from being behind the Iron Curtain. So they know there are people still alive that can say, hey, in the Old Testament, well, I did say, I'm going to say Jesus instead of God, but Jesus was God, even in the Old Testament. So when Jesus says to the Israelites, put up these stones, put up these monuments, so that future generations will come by. Why? Because you're not going to be here forever to tell the next generation and the generation after that what I did here for you. But these things will be testimonies to that will outlive you. So they'll remember. Because what happens when we forget? Our headlines. Aaron's montage happens. When we forget, Aaron's montage happens. That's what happens. Aaron, if we hadn't forgotten, how much harder would it be to put your montage together? Much harder. Much harder. But we have forgotten, so how hard is it, Aaron? It's a different kind of hard, like how much stuff can I fit into one montage every day? So likewise, the whole thing with the Satan statue aside, and that's more than a technicality, but our home state of Iowa, which has not been historically a red state, it's more zealous. It's certainly more zealous than most of the states that have been traditional red, the Indianas, the West Virginias, the Mississippis, right?
Yes.
Florida, another example. It's more zealous than the states that have been historically red states, right? Because those people know. I mean, we went from Barack Obama winning our state twice to Donald Trump doing it. That's a pretty big swing of policy, persona, virtually everything. Right? Virtually everything. Okay? I mean, by the way, you know who else did that kind of a swing? Florida. Went from Barack Obama winning twice to Donald Trump winning it twice. When the people alive still remember what it was like when they had to fulfill the proverb that said, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but sin is a reproach to any people. Or when it says, what can the righteous do when the foundations be destroyed? If you lived in places like Iowa and Florida where they were getting permitted to destroy those foundations, you lived through that. You know what that was like. You're like, not happening here, which is why you were so damn pissed off about the satanic statue.
Yes.
Because given everything else this state has done the last 4 or 5 years, there's no excuse for that.
No.
None. This state has helped lead the way on all kinds of things, even going back to when we threw the judges out back in 2010. And now all of a sudden we're going to let the camel's nose in under the tent with this. That's how it starts.
Yes.
Every time. You let this in. Well, you know, isn't it? Yeah, nope. No, we don't. We don't let it in. Don't let it in. Don't let it back in. No, we don't start marrying the Canaanite women. Don't start. I don't care how hot she is. So is hell. Hell's hot too. Okay? And unlike her, your hell will be forever. Okay? She's one night. Maybe 10 years, if you're lucky. Don't let it back in. Don't. Got some hot Jewish girls here. Pick one of those. Don't let the camel's nose in back under the tent. Don't do it. That's what we did, right?
We did.
Now, we have kind of redeemed ourselves a little bit, somewhat, this legislative session.
I think so.
But that's a warning. We cannot lose vigilance. Because if we're going to, as much as we have led the way on some things here, if we're going to let a Satan statue in at Christmas time, got to stand the watch, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Otherwise, Pyrrhic victories.
Correct. And that's what Florida has lived through, too. I mean, guys, Ron DeSantis beat a guy by 40,000 votes in a state of 21 million people for governor who literally fulfilled a Richard Pryor joke. He got busted doing cocaine off a gay hooker's ass. That's a Richard Pryor joke, guys. Seriously, go look it up. Maybe don't. It's a Richard Pryor joke. Andrew Gillum did that. He literally did cocaine off a gay hooker's ass. He was almost governor. Okay? So if you've come that close to perdition's flame and this other guy shows up and he's competent and he puts like guilty people in jail, you're like, hey, I kind of like the cut of his jib, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're used to just voting Republican and we're in control here, you lose sight of things. And then one morning you wake up and your neighbor's kids are getting taken away because they won't change their pronouns. Do better. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the SteveDeace.com inbox. Take advantage of it by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, we, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you love the podcast version, we love you back. Please show your love for us, if you haven't yet, by leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. You can also, if you don't mind, hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow. And that way, every time we do a new episode, it shows up inside your feed every single time. And thanks to all of you that have done that as well. Thanks to our friends over at Ridge Runner as well. You may have a more sane way of life ahead in your not too distant future. Ridge Runner land in Appalachia is ready for you. There's no better time than today to move your family out of a blue state hellhole where crime and cost of living and hostility towards morals and faith are rampant. Instead, Ridge Runner wants to help you pick pristine land in rural Appalachia with top-notch natural beauty, value, and location. You can move to a Ridge Runner community and be surrounded by people that share your value system, where natural beauty is abundant as well. Small acre lots starting at just $35,000 to large 100-acre holler farms. You can't beat that for under $400,000. Ridge Runner has options for anyone seeking a life piloted in the old ways. Going back, as you like to say, Todd, we have to go back. Ridge Runner wants to help you to do that in the bosom of America's traditional heartland today. Visit ridgerunnerusa.com today. Ridge, just like it sounds, RIDGE. ridgerunnerusa.com today. ridgerunnerusa.com today. And with that, let us get to it. It is time to play Buy, Sell, or Hold. Aaron has a series of predictions and prophecies and premises that, Todd, we are to evaluate. These are submitted by the audience. You and I will evaluate them, determine are we going to buy them, are we going to sell them. If at any point, though, you choose to hold, which is a complete dereliction of the dude code, if you choose to hold, then you have to figure out what it is Lindsey Graham is offering Donald Trump to have a say in his VP pick.
Again, you're getting pretty benign with these Lindsey Graham things.
Am I?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I've been.
Well, I'm 50 now, and I'm trying to be more mature. Like we talked about Andrew Gillum doing cocaine off a gay hooker's ass last hour.
Yeah, that's worse. That's all I'm saying.
You don't say? All right, Aaron, you may begin.
I need to tell you right off the bat, we are about exactly probably 10 months away from our year-end Deace Group episode. And as you all know, if you've ever watched that edition, it's incredibly fast-paced, and we're going to have to do the same here because I have 41 submissions.
Oh, my. Okay.
So feel free to move through these.
So when I said to you last segment, I've got more to say, you're like, do you really? Okay. All right.
Hot knife through butter here. We'll begin with Blaze Muckety Muck Gaston Mooney, who says domestic terrorist attack linked to invasion at the border by the end of 2024.
I'm a buy. That was one of my top 10 predictions of the year. A black swan event. Tied back to what we've allowed to transpire at the border. Sadly, I'm a hard buy on this. Yes. I'm already in.
Correct.
Sean Griffith says the saying trust but verify is outdated. A better saying for this age would be don't trust a damn thing until you triple check it and then have prayed about it and then still be skeptical.
Correct.
I will buy that. I had a buddy of mine who's really skeptical about things typically. But and he's pretty hard right, but he doesn't believe in any of the voter fraud narrative at all, thinks it's all an excuse from the Trump people, okay? And the story that came out of, was it Nevada, where people were voting that they weren't alive or something, and they found out about it, right? Or something like that, I can't remember. There's so much voter fraud, I can't keep track of it all. And I retweeted it with an LOL, and he tweets back to me, well, the government came back and said these ballots were sent by mistake, and I wrote back to him, I go, the last few years have absolutely confirmed my deep desire to take things governments say at face value with no skepticism whatsoever. So, yes, Sean, I'm feeling it. Bye.
Next up, we have Ryan, Mount Rushmore of white trash cuisine,
Here we
hamburger
go.
helper, powdered
yeah.
mac and cheese,
Yes.
Little Debbie's Hostess snack cakes, and SpaghettiOs.
The first three are such magnum opuses, or is it opie? The first three are such magnum opuses that I will allow the disappointment of number 4. I never was a SpaghettiOs guy at all. All 3 of our kids, did your kids do this? Go through a phase where that was all they ate? They would eat nothing else? All 3 of our kids went through this phase when they were little.
Well, they had that with other things. They never had that with SpaghettiOs.
In fact, there were all 3. There was a period of time that they would eat nothing other than SpaghettiOs. Had to be like every meal, or they would refuse it. I don't know what they put in that glorious can, but never was a big SpaghettiOs guys, but those first 3 are. I mean, as a proud alum of white trash, I'm in. Bye.
Bye.
And now for some whiplash, John Baxter says, a couple who inseminate a surrogate with their own fertilized egg by the couple for no other reason than convenience, not wanting to interrupt careers, not wanting to go through the change of the woman's body, etc., aren't actual parents but biological mentors. You're being too kind, John.
So we're saying that
I know of a case exactly like this.
Where cosmetically they're trying to become parents, basically?
Basically. So it's I believe the egg and the sperm from the couple, but put into a surrogate.
And not because she cannot carry a baby
Correct.
to term.
But because she doesn't want to. Yeah.
And it'll do to her body?
Yes.
That's just, man. The vanity of that, man.
I know.
I got to buy. I'm sorry. The vanity of that is just, wow.
Yeah, bye.
Next, we go to Aaron Reale. Olipop probiotic sodas are the truth. Aaron, what the hell is your problem?
I don't even know what that is.
I thought, oh man, this looks really good. It's soda without all the junk that's in, Pepsi, Cola, whatever you want to call.
Yeah.
We got some. It's terrible. It's awful. It is.
I have no idea what it is. I've never heard
Essence of public bathroom.
Yeah, see, there's, eat clean, eat healthy, all that stuff, but don't look me in the eye and say, I've got an all-natural soda for you, and no, don't do that. Just do your thing.
All-natural soda means we're just using pure cane sugar with no additives. So you can just mainline that right into your veins. That's what all natural soda means. Yes.
Chad Steenhook says Christian men were not instructed on how to maintain this republic.
Well,
I'm going to sell. I think they decided not to.
I'm going to buy, although this may be one of the most self-evident offerings we've had in the history of this segment.
We're talking about this generation. I'm absolutely buying, yeah.
Okay.
Next, we go to Jim James. The Beatles' rooftop recording of Don't Let Me Down is the greatest live performance of all time.
Greatest live performance?
I mean, listen, man, you guys know I love the Beatles, okay? But I can't go there with that. I can't. No. I mean, that's like way over the top. Way over the top.
Agreed.
Okay, I got to sell on that. Now, I probably have committed some Beatles sacrilege here, okay? But if Paul
Smash
McCartney,
all the idols, Steve. Smash them all.
Bury the past. Kill it if you have to. If Paul McCartney was here right now, he'd be like, dude, I went to a Beatles, and I can't do his English accent. I went to
that was an English accent?
Yeah, it was a redneck
Let
English.
alone McCartney.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you. You can't do it.
I can't. I think I established that. He's like, did you ever, dude, I was at a Zeppelin concert in 77 with Linda. Their live performance way blew us away on that rooftop, guys. No, it's not number one. I'm pretty confident he would say that. So I'm going to sell. Yeah.
Mr. Excuse Me says Biden is so compromised the left-wing media has turned on him, and by summer he'll be removed or resigned for medical reasons.
So that's way too optimistic. He is clearly the front runner.
I'm going to sell as well. If you put somebody new in opposite Trump, again, let me do this. Look at this the way the opposition looks at it, not the way we would look at it, okay? There's a reason why great coaches, they scout the opponent. They're trying to figure out what the opponent is trying to do, not project what they think they're trying to do, and then you get fooled, okay? If you're the Democrats and you put somebody in opposite Trump now, your entire strategy was essentially to elevate him as a fait accompli to win the primary, to help him win the primary. Because you believe you have him so well defined that you can say anything about him you want, you can do anything to him you want. Letitia James can go out there and say, hey, we're going to seize Trump Tower and liquidate it. In any other era, people that have lost their minds over something like that, but now that's just a headline on a rando Wednesday. And yeah, our side is like, it's got its bits in a blender over it, but you're going to walk down the streets of Carlisle. You could take your wife for a walk this afternoon in Carlisle, Iowa on this beautiful 60-degree day. And is anybody who's not already politically engaged for our side going to stop you on the walk and say, Todd, man, did you hear that that DA in New York is going to seize Trump Tower? And you think that's going to happen in any normie neighborhood in America? Is that going to happen today?
No.
Not one time. Not one time will that occur. Not once. So they know this. If you put somebody in new, well, now that you've now got to go through the process of defining this new person to people. Whom would it be? You put Gavin Newsom in there. He got an audience in front of about 5 million people back in November, and he got his clock cleaned, right? So if you put Kamala Harris in there, you can't put Kamala Harris in there, okay? And so they know this, all right? Believe me, if they could kick the last dinosaur of waspy Democrat, well, he's a Catholic, but you know what I mean, white Anglo-Saxon heterosexual dude. If they could kick that last vestige of this to the curb in the inner party of intersectionality and wokeism, would they not have done this already?
I think the deadline was probably December.
Yeah, but the problem is the Kamala just can't happen, and they know that. They cannot have the first black woman be a complete total F-up of cosmic proportions. They know this. Okay. And so the other thing is if you put somebody new in, even if they're qualified and good, you still have to now go through the burden of defining them, and you give Republicans an opening to define them as something else. Whereas if you just go ahead, as long as Biden doesn't glitch out too much, if you keep with him, and now he's opposite Trump, you can say about Trump anything you want. You can accuse him of anything you want. You can do anything to him you want. And literally anything. I mean, they could literally just run him over with a cheese grater, and I don't know normie America would be like that. that was just too far. That's a great advantage to have if you're looking at it from their perspective. So I don't have to define myself, but I get to define you the way I want over and over and over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter how over the top I go, how dishonest I go, how low I go. There's like no reverb. There's no collateral damage. There's no fallout. There's no blowback. I can just do whatever I want to you. Why would I trade that dynamic in? Now, the cost of that dynamic is steep. Because for the next 258 days, if you are a Democrat, you are sitting here on your knees to Jobu every morning. Please don't let him glitch out. Please don't let him glitch out. Please don't let him just like randomly go into Freebird during a press conference. All right, just please. Because if that happens, particularly if it's close enough to the election, that's your 2024 Comey letter. That's where everybody's just like, oh, you're right. Hillary Clinton is a trash panda. How'd I forget this? That's what the Comey letter did. And the dude just goes out there and just starts screaming about, his 35 wives and you can't have your meat if you don't have your pudding. Just randomly quoting, from Pink Floyd, The Wall. Now, if that happens like around Halloween, people are going to be like, okay, I gotta cut the bait here. So that's the gambit. You keep them there and you get to say and do whatever you want about the Republican nominee, and you don't have to define your guy. But the cost is you're sitting there, man, hoping against hope. The dude, doesn't just wake up in the middle of the night and start yelling about the rice paddy delta. That's your hope. What an election this is that I just defined, by the way. Tell me that's not the actual election environment we're in, though.
It is.
And now that I'm done explaining it, I'm just like, I want to cut myself. I mean, that's just, oh my gosh. Maybe that Eric Adams video isn't as whacked out and weird as we think it is. Hey, look, here's some random bullets. Here's a random gun. Gosh.
Ready to move on?
Yes, go ahead.
I am Mr. Deborah's
in more
complete
ways
lack
than one.
of,
Yeah.
I am Mr. Deborah's complete lack of surprise says, I'll get recognized by Steve Deace as a top 3 Twitter handle name before any current and future nefarious movies are recognized at the Oscars.
Oh, that's an easy buy.
Sure.
That's an easy buy. Dude, I'll speak at CPAC before any nefarious movies get recognized at the Oscars. What does that tell you? Yeah. Because when do you think I'm speaking at CPAC, guys?
Never.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Bobby Angulo says Elon implanting Neuralink into humans has absolutely nothing to do with end times prophecy. You gonna hold?
I'll sell, only because that kind of, if you buy into that prophetic view, that kind of technology will not be. Even if you think Elon Musk is a Red Caesar hero type of Western civ, according to that eschatology, the antichrist has no regard for women. Does Elon Musk have no regard for women?
Well, he kind of uses them and then disposes them.
He regards them quite highly, from what I understand. But that technology will not be singularly proprietary to him, meaning that other people will emulate it. So, sure, I could. Am I buying based on its sarcasm?
Sure.
Or selling based on what it says at face value? Because it's probably sarcastic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll buy. I'll buy it because of the sarcasm.
Same.
Next, we go to Jay, who says establishment pro-life groups are more mad about Roe than lefties now. They can't just pretend to want to end abortion.
There's some truth to this. This is also true of a lot of your pro-life, quote-unquote, pro-life legislators in your state. It was easier to say certain things when they couldn't get done, and they could get all the benefit from it with your vote. But now that the shibboleth of the dam has been smashed, called Roe v. Wade, and they can actually be pro-life now, do the thing, not just say the thing, you are watching them run for the hills, man. Run for the hills faster than you can say Iron Maiden. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Hi.
Yep.
Next, we go to Cousin Rabbit, who has this, making sense of Tucker. His interviews do have a strategic pattern, refocusing media to domestic issues.
I have to sell. He spent the last 6 months as a world traveler. I mean, he went to Argentina. He went to Hungary. I mean, he's been all over the world, Right after he did, literally after he did that interview with Candace Owens about we can't talk about Israel because of the fentanyl at the border, he's been a world traveler like ever since he did that interview. So I mean, I have to sell. I don't agree. I mean, last week he spoke to basically the Arab League chapter of the World Economic Forum. Okay, I mean, whether you agree or disagree with what he is saying, he's put a lot of people's focus on international matters. He was just in Russia. You know, I just sell.
Well, I think he would say, but then he's showing us Russian subways and things like that to show us how much better the optics are domestically for them, yada, yada.
By the way, for the podcast audience, Todd just rolled his eyes while he said that.
Yeah, I'm just back where I was on this. I don't look for some great strategy or pattern from Tucker. Just like, he's going to take each interview as they come, be objective, be a critical thinker like Steve talks about, and analyze accordingly. Tucker Carlson isn't a prophet. You do not need to totally yoke himself to yourself to any great scheme of his.
Next we go to, Esther Wolber, who says Cadbury mini eggs are most definitely the best Easter candy, with Whoppers Robin eggs a distant second. As with pumpkin spice treats in the fall, they should be stockpiled while available to be enjoyed throughout the year.
Even though I think those Robin eggs are from the devil, Esther, the rest of your offering is an offering. I mean, it is holy and just. And so saith the Psalms. I will buy.
I will sell. Grown-ups should not think about candy like this.
Next, we go to...
When can we think of candy? Before or after we do the lightsaber fight, do you think?
Oh, that's coming up. Don't worry. Uncontexted 2 Electric Boogaloo has this: the new updated for 2024 top 10 list of potential candidates to be the antichrist. Number 10, Donald Trump.
Again, has no regard for women, guys. So I got to sell. I have to sell on this.
Number 9, Joe Biden. Doesn't know what a woman is.
Doesn't know.
I don't.
We should hope the Antichrist is a feeble 80-year-old man, all right, who calls a lid at 12:30 in the afternoon. We should hope that. So I'm going to buy. That's not that formidable of a foe. We got a shot.
I'm just selling on the whole thing because the theological thing we appear to be most interested in is the Antichrist. Might I suggest that if you're more interested in theology in other things,
the actual Christ,
you wouldn't be talking about the Antichrist this much.
What's the rest of? He put his boss on the list.
Tucker Carlson, my boss. Gavin Newsom.
Sight unseen. Bye.
Bill Gates, sold to the man of the cold sweat. Number 4, Klaus Schwab. 3, Elon Musk. 2, George Soros, and 1, Taylor Swift.
I think most of those names are ridiculous offerings. I sell the whole list with prejudice, with the exception of your boss. Okay, on that one I buy.
Next.
Hold on. Great time. We're going to talk about the end of the world. Talk about our friends over at My Patriot Supply. Hey, things aren't quite as dismal as they seem. Just in case they could get as dismal as they seem. Go to our friends at My Patriot Supply. They've helped millions of American families prepare for the uncertain future. And many of them start with the 4-week emergency food kits with over a dozen varieties of meals and sides, so you can mix and match. There'll be no food boredom. And they all have over 2,000 calories a day. So we're talking breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks. Sealed inside, ultra-durable packaging. These meals last up to 25 years with proper storage. Stock up on all food kits your family needs at our website, preparewithdace.com. That's preparewithdace.com. You can get each 4-week food kit for $60 off and free shipping. Each 4-week food kit for $60 off and free shipping at preparewithdace.com. Once again, that's preparewithdace.com.
Scott Goldenzof says Lindsey Graham on the Dace Group would be a comedy gold, but result in a lawsuit.
I got to buy.
I'll buy on the latter party. I don't think it would be comedy gold, but lawsuit for sure.
Next, Tiny Johnny has his top 10 list of third movie installments. Let's just buy, sell, hold, wholesale here. Number 10, The Godfather Part 3.
You may
Number
have
9.
disqualified yourself with that first submission, but go ahead.
Number 9, John Wick Parabellum. Number 8, Captain America Civil War. Number 7, Return of the Jedi. Number 6, Dark Knight Rises. Number 5, Revenge of the Sith. Number 4, Logan. Number 3, Spider-Man No Way Home. 2, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And 1, Return of the King.
Rest of that list isn't bad. I kind of think the John Wick movies, frankly, after the first one, are overrated. Just my take. You know, I think Captain America Civil War is one of the best comic book movies ever made. The rest of that list, I'm okay. I mean, there's no way Revenge of the Sith should be ahead of Return of the Jedi if we're doing Star Wars movies. I mean, come on, man. Logan is a masterpiece. The top 3 are great films. The first one might be the greatest film ever made. That number 10, though, you know, you're killing me, Smalls. But the rest of the list isn't bad. I'll buy it.
Also,
next up, we go to Hee Haw the Viking. Top 5 spoof movies. Number 5, Spinal Tap. 4, Shaun of the Dead. 3, Mars Attack. 2, Austin Powers Trilogy. And number 1, Spaceballs.
I've actually seen all of these. Okay.
You got to do Waiting for Guffman.
Waiting for Guffman. No way, Corky. You're not going to put up with, I'm not going to put up with these people because you're bastard people. That's who you are. And I'm going to go home and bite my pillow. That scene is one of the greatest comedic scenes ever filmed.
Reopening, which the Blaze it reintroduced. Kind
of has that similar vibe.
Same vibe, yeah.
But the look that the city council has on their faces when he's just having that 3 Mile Island meltdown, it's freaking classic, man. It is absolutely classic. But that's not a bad list. I'll buy it.
I have to. There's no Monty Python. That's just sacrilege. You can't.
So you're even selling a list that has Spinal Tap, your most quoted movie on it.
Can't.
Okay.
There's no.
You're right. There's no
Holy Grail.
In the Monty
Python
and Holy Grail. That's a good call. No Naked Gun.
Yeah.
Which, you know, another one of the all-time great scenes is OJ over there in the wheelchair when Lindsay Nielsen tries to sing the national anthem at the game. Oh, say, can you see? No. He doesn't know the words.
Whatever year that was.
Yes.
Most of that year, me and my buddies, like, our conversations happened through that movie.
Nice Beaver. Yes. Yeah, it's a great movie. Airplane. Hold on. Airplane's on the list? All right, I'm selling the list. I mean, Airplane is the godfather of spoof movies. Okay? It's the godfather of spoof movies. It's one of the most quoted movies of all time. Airplane has to be on that list. So I'm selling Tiny Johnny. Come back stronger next time.
Next up, we go to Matt's collection, best Western movies, not the hotel, just best Western-themed movies. Number 10, Maverick. 9, Shane. 8, The Frisco Kid. 7, Unforgiven. 6, Bone Tomahawk. 5, True Grit. 4, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. 3, Tombstone. 2, The Magnificent 7. And 1, Blazing Saddles.
That's number 1. Where are the white women at? I haven't seen all those films, but I've heard of them all. So I don't have an objection necessarily. I wouldn't put Blazing Saddles as the number 1 Western. Was Stagecoach on there?
Mm-mm.
I mean, that's like, you know, one of John Wayne's all-time classics. I kind of think that probably belongs on the list somewhere.
Did you see?
You know what? I'm selling.
There was just a story out about how all the stuff that is most streamed as old shows because there's so much crap that's produced.
I saw Critical Drinker tweeting about this.
I'm interested and I have questions. Did you see that they're coming out with a series Shogun?
They're updating it? Yeah.
And that was back in the 70s.
That was in the 70s. That's a great miniseries, yeah.
But, like, how do you take Japanese culture? My first question is, are they going to trans this?
Somebody's got to be non-binary. Yes.
In Shogun.
Yeah.
See, this is a test.
Yeah.
It's one thing if they do it to, like, superhero. If they do it to as conservative a culture as you can get, wow. I'm genuinely intrigued.
Next up, we go to the anti-communist who says the Mount Rushmore of suggestions that will get your suggestion read on air for Buy, Sell, or Hold. Movie or song all-time top 10 list. A college football hot topic. A joke about a funny moment from the show earlier in the week. And any reference to any South Carolina politician. You get us.
That's about it. Standards low. Yep. It's not complicated.
Yep. Jay Ford says, when visiting East Palestine, Joe Biden was surprised to see so many white people and no one from Hamas. Bye.
That's great. That's really good. That is very, very good.
Chris R. says participating in a lightsaber duel outside during a blizzard is more manly than watching millionaires you've never met throw a ball on TV.
I think I might buy this. I mean, you're out there in a freaking blizzard wielding fake lightsabers.
What's his name?
Chris R.
Chris, how many lightsabers do you own?
I'm going to refrain from giving an opinion until I know what Todd's is first, so I know what's safe. What's our answer here, Todd?
Are you holding?
We need a different option because I'm not playing.
There is a different option. It's called holding Lindsey Graham.
I've been clear about all this. It depends on the man.
That's a hold. Steve?
No, I'm going to sell.
Milton says Little River Band is the most underrated band in history.
Not a terrible take.
Okay, I'm glad you got that off your chest, Milton. I mean, I thought, weren't we clear like a couple tweets ago what we want you to come to us with? I don't know.
Next.
Well, I mean, we could just go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
M.E. Gabius says the Detroit Tigers will win the division but lose in the first round of the playoffs.
Okay. I'll take it. I mean, it's a division where 84 wins would probably win the division, so I'll buy. You
Okay,
bet?
sure.
Constantinos Roditis says Eritrean brothers be flipping.
We're back. We're on schedule.
Great.
Nice.
That is great. If you don't know what that's a reference to, you have to watch yesterday's overtime. All right, I discovered a country I had never, Shakespeare's Undiscovered Country. I'd never heard of the place. I've heard of Eternia, but not Eritrea. Never heard of Eritrea, but I've heard of Eternia.
Raymond Fava says Dune Part 2 is the highest grossing film of the year.
Sell, it'll be too smart for people, but I could see it being one of the best films of the year. Something probably more tantalizing will need to be the highest grossing film of the year.
No, I think you're right. It's something total drivel will need to be the highest grossing. I mean, yeah, I think that the too smart thing, there's just too much there.
I watched the first one again this
idiocracy.
weekend to get ready for the sequel. Man, that's a great movie.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I was impressed. I mean, I knew the story, but stylistically, I thought they got it right.
We'll come back. Daniel Horowitz will be with us when we do. Stay tuned. We've got a new show coming here to Blaze TV. I mean, they only once had the most popular show in America, so it stands to tell that people would love to see more of the Robertsons. Well, Cooking with the Robertsons.
I'm in.
Can you imagine just what Phil, just the anecdotes he just casually drops in that environment? That'd be worth the price of admission in and of itself.
I'm in.
All right. And this is a new show here on Blaze TV, Cooking with the Robertsons. So Phil, Miss Kay, the family, grab yourself a plate. They're cooking up a mess of delicious food while dipping into godly wisdom. And the only way the Robertsons know how, they'll share family values and family recipes. All right. So don't forget to say grace, though, before you dig in. Show is available only if you have a subscription to Blaze TV. So if you don't have one yet, head over to blazetv.com. Use code Robertson30. Robertson30 is the code to get $30 off your first year. Hurry, though. This code is not going to last long. blazetv.com, code Robertson30 to get $30 off your Blaze TV subscription so you can start streaming Cooking with the Robertsons. Speaking of Blaze TV colleagues, let's bring in another one of our colleagues here at the Blaze, our good friend Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right, and congrats on your new book.
Thank you. You just reminded me. I forgot to mention it here at the top of the show. Why Easter is coming out on March the 5th, just in time for Easter. All right, so this is the second in our trilogy of books on America's Christian heritage. If you want to get it, you can get the pre-order right now at Amazon.com. Pre-order Why Easter at Amazon.com now. And if you want an autographed version, PremierCollectibles.com/Why Easter is where you can go for that. PremierCollectibles.com/Why Easter. All right, so let's start with some good news. I saw you were praising an endorsement that former President Trump made this morning out of the state of Texas. Tell us who this endorsement is, why you think this is important.
Sure. So obviously, we've struggled for about really since George W. Bush's era, when Republicans flipped the Texas legislature to actually make the Republican legislature, Republican. It's been just an elusive goal. The Tea Party organizations worked very hard, and we just can never get it. In fact, the current speaker, the drunkard, leftist guy, Dade Phelan, when there was a challenger to him last session, I believe the challenger got 2 votes. And one of them was the guy who challenged Tony Tinderholt. So that's how bad it was. And it was so bad, we couldn't even start a Freedom Caucus in Texas because there just weren't enough guys. I mean, this is Texas. Whereas there is a Freedom Caucus in Illinois, believe it or not. So it's that bad. So finally, now it's interesting. You could screw us on every major issue, and evidently it's not a problem, and you don't get a primary. But the thing is, they went overboard there and they impeached Ken Paxton. And it looks like that was enough to get Trump's attention, and he has endorsed a challenger to Dade Phelan, the speaker's seat, his own seat, as well as his lieutenants, couple them down ballot. So this is probably our best opportunity to actually flip Texas. And, I was just thinking, man, had this guy leaned in on that in every other major race from state legislature to governor and Senate and Congress the last 4 cycles, man, we might have a different party. But, look, I'll take it where it comes.
Why has he not done more of it, do you think? I mean, if we look at people that have gotten elected in recent years that were any good on anything, a J.D. Vance, for example, a Ron DeSantis, for example, okay? These were anybody that's gotten elected on our side who's been any good on anything at all wouldn't have gotten elected at all without some notice, help, boost from Trump. So guys like you and I need to recognize that. But that actually then prompts guys like you and I to then turn around and say, well, then what's the excuse for the other 75% of guys and gals he's endorsed that have just sucked? Because now you're telling me that he is able to find good people. That you're right. We wouldn't have gotten these people elected originally without him. So then why? No one's going to bat 100%, but could we, go Harvey Dent here 50-50 maybe, at least bat that. Why hasn't there been more of this? I have my own theory, but why? What's yours?
I mean, Steve, the schism within the party is no longer divided along the lines of what it was really 2012, 2014, that era.
Ideologically.
Where it was ideologically. Yep. Trump has flattened that curve.
Yep.
So it's a matter of, it's really personal.
That's exactly my theory.
Ideology. Yep. So,
it's which coalition are you in? Are you in the Trump orbit? If you are, it doesn't matter what your ideology is. If you're not, it doesn't matter how far right-wing you are, like Thomas Massey and Chip Roy, you're out. If you're or Bob Good, for example.
Bob Good. And in this case, it happened to coincide with our interests. His interests align. It wasn't directly him, but he is very close with Ken Paxton. And Trump understands the language of impeachment. Again, I mean, these guys could vote for, COVID fascism, and they're in the back pockets of the labor unions, the teacher union, and it's been that way for years. That wasn't a problem. But you see the power of when you could actually harness something. I've said all along, you look at Wyoming, Wyoming, for example. So Wyoming is full of tranny Republicans, and Liz Cheney, she not only got defeated, she got something like 29%. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, when you actually harness the attention of the movement to something, that is what every rhino should win. They shouldn't just be defeated. But, I mean, we've seen consistently, by the way, if you look at the polling, Nikki Haley generally in most states gets about 20%. There's a 20% rhino lane. And that's what they should be getting, yet they're the ones usually getting the 70, and it's our guys getting the 30 because there's just ignorance about who these people are. So the same time that Liz Cheney in Wyoming got 29%, Mark Gordon, the governor, got renominated with about 70%, even though Mark Gordon is to the left of Liz Cheney, at least on fiscal issues. He just went to Harvard, gave a speech promoting carbon negative, a.k.a. genocide, you and I are the carbon that they want to eliminate.
Right.
So Steve, what this tells me is it doesn't have to be this way. And I'm just going to read to you a quote from Politico Trump backs McCarthy's chosen successor for House seat. Okay, so this is District 20 in California. It's very red because McCarthy made sure to make his seat extra red at the expense of winning more seats, by the way. It skirts the Bakersfield inner city, so it's like an R+15 district. And Trump endorses the establishment guy there. And they write here that, McCarthy has been very influential in guiding Trump's endorsements in the past. And in particular, he, owns it in California. And in this case, he had some real hardcore supporters there. This sheriff that's running, and, it's over. I mean, and this is gratuitous. It's an open seat. Okay, there's no reason to, have any relationship with anyone there. But what that tells me is it's the same problem you and I have been fighting 9 out of 10 times since he was president, in that McCarthy and that kind of cabal is always playing home field advantage. They always have the inside track while we're always on the outside. And one of two things is true of some of our friends who, kind of share our vision, but claim to be very close to Trump. Either they don't wield the influence they say they do, or they haven't bothered to pick up the phone or
they haven't tried. They haven't tried. Yeah.
Or never even tried. And I can't figure out which one it is, but it's just such a shame.
It probably goes on a case by case basis, frankly. Yeah. That brings me to this. I saw you shared a post on Twitter from Joel Berry, the managing editor over at the Babylon Bee, earlier today. He wrote, quote, Trump is essentially a 90s era Democrat, but the left has gone so far off the deep end into full-blown communist lunacy, it makes him seem far right. Another way of saying this is Trump kind of is the caricature that Bill Clinton tried to sell himself as, but he couldn't. What Joel is basically saying is Bill Clinton couldn't win any Democrat primary of significance in today's Democratic primary. Is that kind of how you read it as well? What were your thoughts?
Well, no, for sure. And Bill Clinton wouldn't have endorsed Bruce Jenner and that sort of stuff back then. So if anything, it's even worse. And I think this is what is so dangerous, that we have a movement that doesn't know how to wipe its rear end without the media, but the left, but the Democrats, but the media. They don't have an affirmative vision. Everything has to be a reaction to the vagrancies of the other side. Yeah. So what happens is the left defines where the swords meet.
Yep.
They define the contours of the debate.
They're literally shaping the debate. Yep.
Yeah, in other words, we're fighting over, men and women's sports or something, like the most absurd iteration of the culture war that they won long ago because we ceded the previous 10 tranches. Or, with illegal immigration, Republicans finally get a little bit more aggressive in their rhetoric. Oh, after we already have 10 million of these guys in just the last couple years, and now we need something so much more robust. That's the thing. They define the landscape, and because we define everything over the fight over Trump, we're all missing the point that they continue to win everything. And like I've been doing throughout these legislative sessions, the left is living vicariously through the Republican Party in every red state, and they're continuing the leftist agenda on education, on healthcare, on global warming, on almost everything, unopposed, just because, well, at least we got Republicans there, and at least we got our memes. This is the problem. I mean, it's Proverbs 4:25. Let your eyes look forward. Let your eyelids look straight ahead of you. Don't deviate right or left or look off, and you'll be on the path of evil if you do that. We don't have a sort of lighthouse at the end of the ocean where we're all steering towards. And that's how we could get a situation where, Elise Stefanik is now a hero, or Nancy Mace is the new Based because she found one thing to hype about, or how we've made people like Elon Musk or these kind of MMA guys or these personalities that are just the Tim Pools, the Joe Rogans, as the lead thought leaders in our movement, when it's nice to have an adjunct, right? A tent where you're driving it, but people come to you because they're just upset with the left.
Yeah.
But, it's not surprising that you'll have a situation, and, you mentioned this before with Dr. Phil. I mean, what the left is doing is so demonic. You could find one or two things where you'll get a pretty mainstream leftist cultural figure say like, whoa, okay, that's kind of nuts, but we're not onto the truth. Now, it's okay and sometimes even helpful to have that as an adjunct, but we don't have the crux of the right, the meat and potatoes of it being something that we could all be proud of, or even just competently steering towards any direction. So again, this is how we can make Bill Clinton a right and that sort of agenda envisioned through Trump as the hero, when it's like, well, okay, I understand the left's fighting him, but is this all we're going to fight for?
All right, I'm going to owe $10 to the polling jar. I've got 90 seconds for you to answer. Emerson was one of the most accurate pollsters in 2020. In a year that the polls were very inaccurate. They were within 2 points of the RCP average. They were the third most accurate pollster at Real Clear Politics that year, according to my records. Pennsylvania was actually one of the most accurately polled states in the RCP average in 2020, when most of the polling everywhere else was way off. All right. So you were pointing out to me privately some results of an Emerson poll in Pennsylvania that make no sense to you. Take about 60 seconds here and explain to our audience why it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if you had to pick one state where Trump is probably the weakest, it would have to be Georgia. And the reason is just because for months, polls were showing 40% of Republicans disapproved of him. That's a big problem. Whether you like him or not, Brian Kemp seems to have beaten him out on these proxy races there, including Brian's own reelection. And he is popular with the type of Republicans you're going to need to hold on to. They largely blame Trump for losing the 2 seats, whether you believe in that or not is a different story. And yet Emerson has Trump with twice as large of a lead in Georgia as North Carolina. Now you look, Georgia's been bleeding the other way, whereas North Carolina, since Obama squeezed out that extra black vote in the urban areas, has been moving back to where it used to be pre-Obama. And suddenly we're to believe Trump is up 6 in Georgia, but 3 in North Carolina. I mean, this is the type of...
I said Pennsylvania. I meant to say North Carolina. My mistake.
North Carolina. Yes. Or in Pennsylvania, there was another poll. I forget which one. I don't know if it was Emerson, but there was a poll that had Trump doing 10 points better than the Republican for Senate. And it doesn't add up. Steve, if you look at the RCP predictions, their final predictions in 2022.
Quickly.
Okay?
Yep.
It was like 240 House seats, 53 or 54 Senate seats, definitely more governorships than they got. I can't believe we're doing this again. I mean, we've learned nothing. There is nothing on the ground that reflects what these polls are saying. And by the way, in 2020, the Republican Party ran ahead of Trump. Now, a lot of people felt that's why it was stolen. That's proof it was stolen. So I don't understand the evidence that Trump's going to run way ahead of your generic Republican.
All right. Great stuff, my friend. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care.
Daniel, brought to you by Real Estate Agents I Trust. When you absolutely, positively have to buy or sell a home, especially during these unprecedented times,
Bing.
Make sure you go in with an agent you can trust. If you're tired of dealing with incompetent real estate agents, don't do that. Okay, go get a real estate agent you can trust at realestateagentsitrust.com. A lot of times they're the top sellers. They know the lay of the land, best practices in your market. And a lot of times they're from right here in this audience. So they have the same value system that you do. If you want to give it a shot today, and you do, if you're going in to this uncertain housing market, realestateagentsitrust.com is where you want to go. The name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. Once again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. Gentlemen, final thoughts before we head to the overtime.
Yeah,
So,
my thoughts too. Yeah.
2022 all over again?
I don't know. I don't know.
Somebody posted a video.
Look at the results. I'm sorry.
Somebody posted a video the other night presenting it without context of when this happened, of Barack Obama getting heckled at a rally in Michigan. So I looked this up. The video is from 2022, just a few days. And the comment was, wow, look at this. And I saw a reply that said, people just really don't like Democrats' policies. The video was a few days before the 2022 midterms. Again, it was in Michigan where the GOP nominee lost by 10 points. And overall, that midterm election was a dour disappointment for Republicans.
Yep.
But hey, we heckled Barack Obama, so substitute that for winning because...
I mean, Elon Musk tweeted out today a report from our colleague Chris Pandolfo, our good friend, talking about the amount of illegals being brought into the country. And Elon Musk tweeted a story and said, I hope people are waking up. Look at the results in New York 3 last week. Queens, where a bunch of those illegals were dropped off by Abbott and DeSantis. People don't seem to be waking up.
Sometimes your nominee is the option, then the party sucks, or vice versa. In this case, our nominee and our party apparently aren't an option. Is that bad?
I wouldn't call it good. Romans 8:28.